We got 7 different stories from 7 different news outlets, guys. It's time for another episode of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with another episode of Regan's Newsround, episode 20. And we start with The Guardian with the headline that Labour are to focus on blue wall seats as it kicks off the by-election drive. The Shadow Chancellor is to highlight increased mortgage costs as party targets Tory seats coveted by the Lib Dems. So it looks like here that they're going to be, that obviously it makes sense for them to go after the blue wall seats. No, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, here's the thing, right? Well, I guess maybe it does. I'm a little bit conflicted, obviously, before we talk about read the article, because obviously those targeted seats are going to be targeted by the Lib Dems in particular, especially from the local level. So it looks like there's going to be quite a few clashes between Labour and Lib Dems over some seats there, and that could come back to bite them because while of course Labour will be looking to reclaim their red wall, we know that they're going to need there's still a lot of seats to contest in order for them to win the general election. There are some Conservative seats out there that, despite the pollings and stuff, there's still no guarantee that they're going to win them. So they're looking at all options here. Labour looks like, and looking at some key blue wall seats as well. The by-elections will no doubt have these 2 by-elections coming up will no doubt have an impact, but it's about what will happen later on in the general election as well. I do think significantly that you would expect Labour to win both of them, but whether they will hold on to them at the next general election, I think is another thing to say the matter. I don't know if whether or not they're going to be pushing blue wall seats, because the thing is that they're not going to gain traction in Scotland, because the last time they were in power, they had a lot of seats in Scotland. Now I don't see them gaining. They may gain some ground, but I don't see them gaining much at all in Scotland, if I'm absolutely honest. But this focus on blue wall seats, they need to take seats from somewhere. So we'll have to wait and see, obviously, won't we? So Labour is to kick off campaigning in a string of upcoming by-elections by highlighting increased mortgage costs in the so-called blue wall constituencies. In a tactical shift in which the party will openly target Conservative-held seats converted by the Liberal Democrats. Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, is to visit Kingswood, a constituency vacated by Chris Skidmore, the Conservative who quit as an MP last week in protest at the government's planned new rounds of oil and gas licences. Reeves will highlight a Labour analysis of rising mortgage costs in 42 constituencies identified as being in the blue wall. A Lib Dem conned term for relatively affluted seats, generally Tory held and often in communal belts around cities. On Reeves' visit to Kingswood just outside Bristol, she will say more than 100,000 households in the 42 constituents will have mortgages that need renewing this year, with the bulk facing steep increases in payments. As well as highlighting the continued repercussions of the physical crisis that sparked by Liz Truss's brief time in government, the choice of blue wall constituencies of the analysis, including the top Lib Dem targets such as Esher and Walton, Wimbledon and Winchester, shows a new Labour confidence that they can attract disaffected centrist Conservatives. There is no doubt that they're going to attract some Conservatives, but there are some who are so in tune with the original Conservative viewpoint that they're not going to turn to Labour, that they will do either two things. They will either vote for a different party, Reform most likely is the one they'll go after, or they won't vote at all. They're not going to be able to get. They will get some. They will get Tory voters who voted in 2019 to vote Labour. We expect some of them to turn. That's expected. But the long-term voters, some of them will vote Labour, but not as many as I expect. I expect most of them to either vote Reform or not vote at all. That's what I expect. The real hardcore Conservative voters. A Labour source said last year mid-Bedfordshire's by-election, where the party saw off a strong Lib Dem challenge to take formally firm Conservative seats, showed that they were now no-go areas for us. In mid-Beds, we could have rolled out the yellow carpet and told the Lib Dems, we'll leave you to it, but we fought them and won. It shows quite how far we've come in such areas since 2019. The job for Rachel is key has been to convince voters that they can trust us on the economy and that we take physical disciplinary seriously. The mortgage analysis, based on the data from the Bank of England and the House of Commons Library, estimates that the among 111,600 mortgages due to renewal in the 42 seats this year, 2,800 are in Kingswood. Oh God, the mortgage doing for renewals are going to be so bad for people. They're going to be so bad. Labour said that while the average monthly repayments for families formerly on fixed-term mortgages have risen to £240, given higher average house prices in blue wall seats, for these areas the average could be nearer £385. While the date for Kingswood's by-election has not been finalised, it is expected in mid-February, most likely on the same day as one in Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, triggered after enough local voters supported a recall petition for the sitting Tory MP Peter Bone. Peter Bone's missus is going to be standing as a candidate in that. I don't see the benefit, but yeah. This happened after Bone suspended from Parliament for 6 weeks after a watchdog found he had bullied a staffer and exposed his genitals near their face. Reeve said homeowners across Britain, including many lifelong Tory voters, have been left worse off after 14 years of economic failure. The aftershocks of the Conservative disastrous mini-budget that crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates soaring continue to be felt for thousands of hard-pressed families. They do continue to be. They will be. The effects are going to be going on for a while, guys. It's going to be a while before the effects of it wear off. That is for sure. But it will be interesting. What the turnout's going to be for these by-elections, and it'll probably give another indicator of what people's mindset are thinking. Obviously, by-elections are very different to general elections. It's very important that we make that distinction as well. And of course, there is still the other caveat of the voter ID factor that we have to play into it. That's going to be something that as we get closer to whenever a general election is called, that we take that into account. So that's something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on for sure, guys. So the next one we have is from Sky News. The headline is Civil Servants Accuse Former Ministers of Cowardly Blame Game over the Post Office Scandal. Mark Swasher, the General Secretary of the PCS Union, said politicians should take responsibility for their mistakes instead of scrambling to blame others, after Sir Ed Davey and Lord Peter Mandelson appeared to highlight what they suggest were shortcomings of officials. So before I read more into this article, obviously, I also want to make another point. I was listening to The Rest is Politics with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, and Rory Stewart didn't really put Alistair Campbell on the spot. But he basically tried to play like he knew about it but didn't know too much about it, sort of thing. I just felt like you're trying to act like he didn't know too much about it, and it kind of really ticks me off a little bit, because it's like the questions were there, and it just seems like that they're just playing along like the rest of politicians, really. Like, did he really not know? Like, am I really going to believe that? You know, I like that there's the way that this is phrased here, because politicians, no matter what political party in this whole saga, guys, they all have ownerships and responsibilities of this, and blind eyes were turned. And the thing is that I was reading a story where basically it's not possible to force Fujitsu, the company responsible for the IT failure. It's not actually, at the current time of this recording, there's no law that forces them to pay back this money that they've taken. There's no way to do it. But we have to compensate these people somehow. And you know, what that means, right? It means us taxpayers are going to be forking it out. Now, I know that's going to infuriate people, but the other caveat is well, how do you force this company to pay it out? Well, if the Conservatives had changed the laws, if Labour had changed the laws when they were in power, this wouldn't have happened. They were allowed to get away with this. And the chances of us recouping the money that they have taken from these people is very, very unlikely, to say the least, guys. Civil servants have hit back at cowardly former ministers who have criticised them for their alleged failures to act on the Post Office Horizon scandal. A blame game is underway following the ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office, which described of how hundreds of sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses were wrongly held responsible for accounting errors created by the faulty IT Horizon software. Sir Ed Davey and Lord Peter Mandelson, who are both facing questions for their roles as postal affairs ministers and business secretaries during the scandal, have laid some of the blame at the door of civil servants, with the latter arguing that officials should have been more focused on cohesive of what was going on and that they have failed to protect the ministers. Now, this is nonsense. Why is this civil servants' fault? They should know about this. They were postal, both of them were postal affairs ministers. They should have known about this. So why on earth are they pointing the finger at the civil servants here? In an interview with Sky News, Sir Ed, the Liberal Democrat, yearly accused officials in the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills of lying to me over the scandal. Yeah, it just sounds like blame game to me. Mark Swatchka, General Secretary of the Public and Commercial Service Union, told Sky News that Lord Maldon's comments were just another cowardly example of politicians scrambling to blame others for their own mistakes. Politicians are quick to take credit when things go well. They should be humble and honest to take responsibility for their mistakes and swiftly deliver justice for the wrong sub-postmaster and sub-postmistresses. Dave Penman, the General Secretary of the FDA, a union for civil servants, branded Sir Ed's comments outrageous and said they were an act of desperation from a former minister trying to save his own skin. If he has any skin, this is you think this would be for him. He should resign. But we all know that if he resigns, Liberal Democrats are dead in the water at the next general election. But unfortunately, you know, he was there when he was there. And he must have known. If he remains as leader going into the general election as Liberal Democrat leader, that's going to be very tough for them to win over votes. You know, that's going to be very tough for them to win over votes. Ed Davey has gone beyond what is reasonable to expect from a former minister, he told Sky News. If he's going to repeat this, he needs to back up his accusations. Yeah, if he's going to blame the civil servants, he has to provide evidence for it. He can't just point the finger at them. He added civil servants should rightly be held to account for what they did and didn't do, but they need an opportunity to defend themselves. Between 1999 and 2015, more than 700 people were prosecuted for variants of offences, including theft, fraud and false accounting, causing many to lose their jobs, livelihoods and reputation. On Wednesday, Rishi Sunak announced that a new law would be introduced to exonerate and compensate those caught up with the Horizon scandal, and that those who were part of the group legislation order against the Post Office would also be eligible for an upfront payment of £75,000. Sir Ed, who was Postal Affairs Minister between 2010 and 2012 during the coalition government, has attracted particular criticism after it emerged that he refused to meet sub-postmasters Alan Bates, whom the TV drama is named after, and on a number of occasions saying in a short 3-paragraph letter that the meeting wouldn't serve any purpose. Oh, well, maybe it would have served purpose now in hindsight, wouldn't it? However, Sir Ed did later meet with Mr Bates when he was First Minister on public records to do so. It is understood that he then asked the officials to follow up on the concerns raised by sub-postmasters after the meeting. Speaking to Sky News this week, Sir Ed said, "I wish I'd known what we all know now. The Post Office was lying on an industrial scale to me and other ministers." Were they really in the dark? When I met Alan Bates and listened to his concerns, I put those concerns to my officials in the department, to the Post Office and to the National Federation of Postcasters. It's clear they were all lying to me. Sir Ed was joined in his criticism of the civil servants by Lord Maldon, who was in charge of the oversight of the Post Office from 2008 until his departure in 2010. In his Times Radio podcast aired earlier this week, Lord Maldon said, "I'm not trying to point the finger at particular civil servants," obviously he added, "but they should be given much more focus and cohesiveness of what is going on. And their job is to, in a sense, to both protect ministers and serve the wider public interest, and in this instance that failed." Separately, it has emerged that Lord Maldon was made personally aware of the Horizon issue after an email released under the Freedom of Information showed that they were highlighted to him in 2009 by Tory peer Lord Adonot. However, rather than respond himself, the FOI instead showed a response from his junior business minister, and now close ally of Sir Keir Starmer, Pat McFadden, who said there was nothing to indicate that there are any problems with the Horizon system. A spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats said, "Ed has been clear that the Post Office managers lied to the victims, to judges and to the ministers. Those lies circulated around the entire system. It is also the case that, like all former ministers and Post Office managers, civil servants, particularly those sitting at the Post Office board, must face the inquiries and answer questions. The priority needs to be getting justice and compensation for the victims. The Labour Party has been approached for comment." I'm sure the Labour Party will have commented by the time you guys have watched this guys. But are we really to believe, guys, that Sir Ed Davey did not know and that he was lied to throughout all of it? Are we generally going to believe that? Does he have a fair point? He might have a fair point, but I'm not 100% sure in the belief of it, if I'm honest, guys. I just feel like that to point the finger at civil servants to say that they knew and they didn't know, and the government, the finger pointing just feels like to me is that everyone is desperately trying to avoid scrutiny, and I feel like it just feels like nothing more than finger pointing at this point, and yeah, it's as I said, it's going to rumble on as always, guys. It's extremely frustrating to say the least. Right, so the next one we got is from the BBC. This is Tory MPs are piling further pressure on Rishi Sunak over the Rwanda bill. We're getting closer to that Rwanda bill as each day passes by, you guys. Rishi Sunak is facing further pressure from the Tory MPs over his Rwanda bill. Where is this going, guys? Where is this going? That's the really question, guys. Where do we think this is generally going? Let me know what you guys honestly think in the comments section, because this one, oh boy, you know, talked a little bit about this in a couple of videos, obviously, but I just feel like he's damned if he's do, damned if he don't on this Rwanda bill. But do we honestly think this is going to happen? I'm not so sure, guys. I'm not so sure. The Prime Minister is trying to revive his plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda after the Supreme Court ruled earlier the scheme was unlawful. More than 40 MPs on the right of the party, including Liz Truss, argued the legislation must be toughened up. See, here's the thing. How is he going to toughen it up without breaking international law? That's the thing that I'm trying to figure out, guys. I can't see how he can toughen it up without breaking international law. That's the thing I'm kind of perplexed by. And if he toughens it up too much, then Rwanda are just going to pull out of it because it's in breach of the international law, and Rwanda have threatened that. How is he going to get out of this? This is the thing. I'm curious to know what's he going to. He's going to obviously. Surely he will try to offer something or some concession or something to try and get Weasel out of this. And I'm curious to know what is he going to offer to get out of this mess. But the former Justice Secretary, Sir Robert Buckland, from the centrist One Nation group of Tory MPs, has backed 3 changes that would tone down some measures. Writing on X, formerly Twitter, the former Prime Minister, Ms. Truss, said, "We need to crack down on illegal migration." Oh my God, not this. And remove the loopholes being exploited by activist lawyers. It's essential the legislation we are passing is watertight. That's why I'm backing amendments to the bill. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, who resigned last month over the legislation, is coordinating a series of rebel amendments and has warned the bill, as it stands, is guaranteed to fail. Yeah, as of right now, it's guaranteed to fail. So he has to make some amendments if he wants to try and get this through. Illegal migrants would continue to successfully challenge their removal in court in a fresh merry-go-round of appeals, he said. The government insists the legislation and the safety of Rwanda asylum and immigration bill, which returns to the Commons next Tuesday, will allow only a vanishingly small number of appeals. But the amendment backed by Sir Robert would delete clauses from the bills declaring Rwanda a safe country, disapplying the Human Rights Act, and forcing courts to disregard interim rulings by the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights. The One Nation group is the largest single faction within the Conservative Parliamentary Party. It says more than 100 MPs are members, almost a third of the total. The 5 families of the Conservative Party. It argues that the UK's human rights obligations in international law must be respected. Former First Secretary of State Damien Green, who chairs the group, said he'd been assured that the bill would not be strengthened. The Prime Minister looked me in the eye and said he doesn't want to go any further, he told the New Statesman. The Rwandan government has said it will pull out of the scheme if it does not comply with international obligations. Downing Street says government will carry on talking to MPs and carefully consider amendments put forward. It has worked to ensure the bill was robust, Number 10 added. And before Christmas, Mr. Sunak comfortably saw off a Tory rebellion over the bill when it cleared the first common hurdle by a majority of 44 voters. But the scale of the party's divisions on the issue again has been highlighted in recent days, with a number of former cabinet ministers, including Kuela Braverman, Sir Incan Duncan Smith, backing the Jenrick amendments. Nearly 2 years after Boris Johnson's government first announced plans to deport some asylum seekers to Rwanda, none has been sent to the East African country. How much money have we given them so far? That's right. We've given them quite a lot of money. for absolutely nothing, when that money could have gone to maybe, I don't know, the cost of living crisis, our NHS, maybe a better education system. Just saying, just putting that out there. Gimmick. The bill aims to stop flights being grounded by legal activists declaring that in UK law, Rwanda is a safe country. It would enable ministers to ignore emergency orders from the ECHR to suspend a flight while an individual legal case was being heard. But rebels insist it will still allow the policy to be derailed by a wave of individual appeals and wants to tighten the circumstances in which they would be allowed. This is the thing. Like they're trying to basically, essentially, what they're trying to do is take away the rights, the human rights of these people. That's essentially what they're trying to do. And they can't do that without breaking international law. Because that's what they're trying to do here. They also want to make it the default position that ministers would ignore ECHR injunctions blocking flights. Again, I just feel like you're gonna try and take away the human rights of these people. Where does it end there? What's to stop taking human rights away from UK citizens, if they can do it to them? The Prime Minister has promised to stop migrants crossing the channel in small boats and argues his Rwanda scheme will prove a significant deterrent. Labour have said that the scheme is a hugely expensive gimmick and will not work, and Keir Starmer has accused Mr Sunak of being taken hostage of his own party. He said he would tackle illegal migration by prioritising the smashing of people smuggling gangs. No detail whatsoever from Keir Starmer here. He's saying that, but he's given no information on how he's going to deal with it. Not in that. He said, we're going to tackle the gangs. Okay, how are you going to tackle the gangs? Well, we're going to tackle the gangs. Okay, Keir, how are you going to tackle the gangs? We're going to tackle the gangs. Okay, but how are you going to deal with it? Silence in the room. Silence in the room. Safe routes. The government is working on a Commons majority over the other parties and independent MPs of 56, implying that the 29 Conservative MPs would need to vote against the bill to defeat it. But in practice, the majority is larger because of some independent MPs usually vote with the government and others tend to be absent. In addition to this, some Tory rebels are likely to abstain while others are also vote with the government. If the bill does not clear its common stages next week, it is likely to face prolonged opposition in the Lords. Meanwhile, the Home Office is to publish a report on safe and legal routes for migrants seeking to enter the UK, but it does not list any new routes. Campaigners have long argued that the government needs to provide safe routes for people seeking refuge from war and oppression to help tackle illegal migration. During debates on the Illegal Migration Act, which became law in July 2023 and bars anyone entering the UK illegally from claiming asylum, ministers promised to specify additional safe and legal routes. But there aren't any, except unless you're Ukrainian or Hong Kong. Number 10 said there were already a significant number of routes and its priorities was to secure the UK borders. Again, can you provide us with some routes that doesn't include Ukraine and Hong Kong? The government's compassion was unlimited, but the country's capacity to take in migrants was not, it added. Can you provide those safe and legal routes? Please tell us how people can come to this country safe legal routes without having to be of Ukrainian nationality or Hong Kong. Can you provide that? Anyone want to provide that? No, can't provide it. I didn't think so, guys. They keep saying they're going to stop the boats and reduce the numbers. They haven't reduced the numbers, and this is poor. This has been poor management. Poor management from the last 14 years. Yes, of course, Brexit had made it leaving the EU made it worse, guys. It definitely exaggerated the issue. But they know they can. There are much simpler ways to deal with this, and they're not dealing with it. And this Rwanda scheme is not going to stop the boats. It's not going to stop people coming to the UK. And you can't stop it outright anyway. You can only reduce the numbers, and there are ways you can mitigate and reduce it. This is not the way to do it. This is not the way to stop it in any way, shape or form, guys. By the way, while you're here, guys, if you can, hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I upload another video. Let's dive into the next one, guys. This one is an exclusive for My News. With the headline that energy bill reductions planned to help vulnerable shelved by the government. The promise to consider a lower energy tariff for certain consumers was first made in 2022 and reiterated by Rishi Sunak last year. But they've changed their minds, apparently, according to this exclusive. Wow. You know, there was an opportunity to do that in the last budget by Jeremy Hunt, to provide some kind of support for people with these energy bills. And it looks like it's fallen on deaf ears, guys. And it's really, are we surprised? You know, people are struggling to pay the bills. Never mind just people are just struggling to pay these bills. They're so high. And what's so ridiculous is that they're still cracking out massive profits, these energy companies. Record dividends to shareholders and whatnot. Laughing their way to the bank every time. And we're just paying more and more and more. And it's outrageous. The people are being ignored. We are being ignored, guys. Plans to launch a social energy tariff for vulnerable households struggling to pay their bills have been quietly shelved by the government, the Eye understands. The promise to consider a lower energy tariff for certain consumers were first made in 2022 and reiterated by Rishi Sunak last year. But sources have indicated that is no longer a priority, with ministers looking at other ways to help those in need. A government spokesperson said it was supporting vulnerable households through additional payments that would keep all options under review. Ministers previously said the Department of Energy and Net Zero would launch a public consultation in the summer of 2023, but it has not been forthcoming. This is despite calls from organisations representing disabled people, poorer households and the energy industry itself for ministers to consider some form of social tariffs. When pressed on the issue of a social tariff in the Commons on Wednesday, Mr Sunak did not reiterate a previous commitment to the consultation. The development has sparked concerns from campaigners who urged the government not to break its pledge and suggested it had underestimated the scale of the energy debt among households. Daniel Portas, the Deputy Director of Energy UK, which represents providers, told the Eye the group is concerned that ministers are underestimating the scale of the issue regarding the number of households that are unable to pay its energy bills. Ofgem revealed last year that debt levels for energy customers are estimated to have risen to nearly $3 billion, but Mr Portas said industry experts suggest that debt is significantly higher than Ofgem's headline statistics. He pointed to research industry by consultancy firm BFY Group, which suggests debt could be more than 3 times higher than predicted. When consumers use energy but don't pay their bills, the cost of that energy still needs to be met. Either this can be spread across paying customers, with regressive disproportionately impacting lower income households, or across taxpayers, which is progressive and avoids further bill increases for households that are just about managing, Ms Portas argues. Charities representing sick or disabled people such as Scope have long argued that a social tariff would be responsible to protect homes where people may be energy intensive. You know, if we had just worked on more ways to keep our homes warm, like insulation, for example, if we insulated our homes, guys, we would save us so much on our energy bills. There's so many things that the government could have done to avoid this, and now those the most vulnerable are struggling here, and my heart absolutely goes out to them. It's really disheartening. This could apply to those with conditions that require extra warmth, or if they are running machinery to support them with their day-to-day needs. Louise Robin, head of policy of campaigns at Scoop, told the Eye that not going ahead with the consultation would be a slap in the face for disabled people who face astronomical bills because they have no choice but to use more energy. She said that in the years since the promise was made, almost a third of disabled people have been pushed into debt, and said that the crisis had not gone away. The charity had previously called for an energy social tariff discount to bills of 50% for disabled people, carers and those on low incomes that sit alongside existing support. We're hearing from disabled people who can't afford to eat, are using candles instead of switching lights on, and rationing how much they use their equipment like powered wheelchairs, she explained. This is disgusting. This is disgusting, and we know this is abhorrent, guys. Thousands of disabled people, charities and campaigners have been calling since the start of this crisis because we know it will make an enormous difference to disabled people's lives. The government needs to keep its promise. Mr Podders of UK Energy also made the argument that a social tariff will make lower income households more desirable customers for firms to take on, preventing them from being excluded from the market. Support for struggling households is essential for ensuring that everyone is able to participate in the market and that suppliers can design products and services to meet their needs, he said. This is especially important as we think ahead to net zero and ensuring no one is left behind. Exactly, no one should be left behind in any way, shape or form. In January 2023, Mr Sunak told the Commons the government was consulting on the best thing to do going forward, including options such as social tariff as part of our wider reform of the retail energy market. Later in that year, in April, the then Energy Secretary Graham Sharps told MPs, "We do think that things like a social tariff could be very helpful, and that the Chancellor has undertaken to look at this as well." And what's happened since then? Nothing. Talking is one thing, action is another. The government has been forced to spend billions in helping households with soaring energy bills as the conflict in Ukraine pushed up gas prices. From October 2022 to March 2023, the government has capped bills on an average of £2,500 per year and offered households £67 per month towards the cost of their energy. The comparison is insane. Lower income households have been offered the government support payments of up to the value of £900, but these are due to come to an end in April, and ministers have not yet set out plans to continue financial support. That's because they don't care, because they're on their way out, allegedly, in a general election. Department for Energy Security and Net Zero spokesperson, "We recognise the cost of living challenges families are facing, which is why we're spending £104 billion supporting households with bills. Energy prices are falling, and our energy price guarantee remains in place to protect people until April next year. We're also continuing to support the most vulnerable, with 3 million households expected to benefit from the £150 warm home discount, and 8 million households expecting to receive a £900 cost living payment. We're continuing to keep all options under review and most in need." But it feels like to me it's just, again, guys, rhetoric, talk. Yeah, we're going to provide them with this, we're going to do this, we're going to make a massive difference to their lives. And things have not changed for the better, has they? That's the thing. Like, again, like, my heart goes out to everyone who's struggling against cost of living crisis. It really is deplorable. And I just feel like they're not doing enough, government. They're not doing enough. If they generally cared, they would be doing more, guys. Those having to rely on candles and make these desperate means just to get by. It's extremely disheartening. It really, really is. And all I can say is that I just hope that if Labour do come into power at the next general election, whenever that may be, that they will ensure that these people are given the support that they need, because that's what. While the economy people talk about as the number one priority, this cost of living crisis needs to be dealt with, and the Labour government needs to get right on top of it as soon as they get in, because people are struggling out there. They are desperately in need of help. So let's break the ice a little bit before we get to the next three articles, guys. This is about a car insurance rage. I hope you guys enjoy this.
I got my car insurance renewal quote, and it's gone up for the 5th year in a row.
Our underwriters carry out extensive statistical analysis to assess risk based on age, driving experience, vehicle mileage, and a number of other determining factors. Policies can rise as well as fall.
I'm a pretty loyal customer, so is there anything you can do?
Can we start with your name, please?
It's Malcolm Clark.
Okay, that's costing you there.
My name?
According to our data, Malcolms are 2.4 times more likely to be involved in an accident.
It's just a name.
It's what the data says.
Well, can you try Mal?
That has actually brought it up slightly.
What about Brian? My middle name is Brian.
Brian with an I or Brian with a Y?
What difference would that make?
Around €500.
You know, what if I changed my name?
Sorry?
Is there any name I could use that, like, bring down the premium?
Philomena. Philomenas are 15% less likely to have been involved in an accident in the previous year. Is your date of birth still the 24th of the 8th, 1985?
Yes, it hasn't changed.
Okay, that's affecting your premium.
My age or something?
No, it's the month. Virgos are 2.3 times more likely to be involved in a road traffic accident. They're also slow to change, reluctant to let love into their life, and shy to trust.
Maybe there'll be a tall, dark stranger in my future that'll come and pay my fucking car insurance. I got my...
Oh, is that what you guys have to put up with sometimes when it comes to dealing with these phone calls with certain people? When you're just like trying to get some help, and sometimes the customer service is really, really robotic as opposed to the humanity side of it. It can be very, very robotic or extremely rude, as I know some of you guys have some of you guys have probably not had the best of conversations with some of these people. Just a prime example of just how messed up some parts of our country, especially here in England, it is, I suppose. Right, we've got 3 more articles for you guys. Just a reminder, while you're here, make sure you hit that like button while you're here. It'd be greatly appreciated. Share it across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I go live or when I upload a video as well. So the next one we have is from The Independent, you guys. And the headline is: Starmer denies supervised toothbrushing in schools that in schools is nanny state politics. What on earth is this all about, guys? So Labour leader is up for a fight over interventionist plans to boost children's health. Like this headline, supervised toothbrushing, like just feels like, what on earth is this? I saw this and I'm thinking like a nanny state politics. I just feel like, where are we going with this, guys? Where are we going with this? I think before I jump to conclusions, I think I need to read a bit of this to get my head around this headline, guys, from the Independent. So Keir Starmer has denied his plans to bring in a supervised toothbrushing of young children in schools, amounting to a nanny state politics. The Labour leader said the Conservatives should be ashamed of the decline in some health outcomes for British children, suggesting that it amount to criminal neglect. Now, there's absolutely no question that the crisis in our national health, the dentist NHS service, had made things worse for people's teeth, because then it means that people are forced to go private for dentist care, because there's so little. It's almost impossible to get appointments for an NHS dentist. So that without a doubt is definitely having an effect. But when it comes to children being able to brush their teeth, I'm just going to say this: if you can afford a basic toothbrush, if you can afford basic toothpaste, that should not be something that government or state should be making sure that their children are brushing their teeth. No, that should be down to the parents and guardians making sure that they're doing that. In no way, shape or form should government be overwatching when it comes to them brushing their teeth. Just going to put that out there. Defending Labour's plans to introduce supervised toothbrushing at free breakfast clubs, Sir Keir said tooth decay should be consigned to the history books. What's this? A toothbrushing a free brief? I'm curious to know a bit more about this, if I'm honest. He also vowed to boost dental service to ensure children get appointments when they need one, part of plan to create a healthiest and happiest generation of children ever in Britain. But the announcement drew criticism from teaching unions, with leaders saying it is not the role of teachers to make sure children brush their teeth each day. Exactly. That I absolutely agree with. That should be down to parents to making sure they're doing that. Now, if they're struggling to make ends meet, then there needs to be something ensuring that children are given the essentials that they need. Yeah, because while I'm undoubtedly in favour of this breakfast club to ensure that kids have a meal before the start of day in schools, what are we doing to ensure that kids are getting their teeth brushed? And it does come across to me a bit of a too much of a nanny state, in that, because that should be something that should be done with at home. Now, how do we ensure? So what are we going to do? Are we going to hand out? I think what they should be doing, instead of if there are those who are struggling with it, maybe they should hand out a free, under Labour government, perhaps once a year, introduce, once a year or every 6 months or something, get a free kids get a free basic toothbrush they can take home, and a pack of toothpaste if parents cannot afford it, so at least they're able to brush their teeth every day. And then it'll be down to the parents to make sure that they're doing that. If they can't afford that basic need at home, maybe that should be done, instead of having them doing it at the school, because then it is getting a bit too supervised. I know it costs money to provide this kind of thing, but we need to give the children the best chance we can, guys. That's kind of my point. But I don't agree with this whole nanny state thing, because that is where it's starting to feel like that a little bit. Asked by reporters if supervised toothbrushing for 3 to 5-year-olds was nanny state politics, Sir Keir said, "We want to encourage good parenting, but I don't think we can just turn our back on it." He added, "When I first read the statistics for that 6 to 10-year-olds, that the biggest admissions to hospitals, I was really struck. That is shocking, and I don't think you can simply say that's none of our business." Sir Keir said that both parents and the governments had a role in the well-being of children. He said there is a role for the state in this, he added, adding that he was up for a fight. I do think the government is like the government trying to help us out, but I don't think they should be supervising kids brushing their teeth. I don't think that's the need. But I think my idea here of provide a basic toothbrush to kids if they do not have one, as well as the toothpaste, and then the parents can then get into the habit of making sure they are brushing their teeth every day. I think that's all right. But I don't think that the government or teachers need to be overwatching it. That is going a bit too far for me. But like I've said before, guys, I am in favour of the breakfast club. Analysis of the OCCD data shows that Britain's children are falling behind their international counterparts when it comes to poor health outcomes. Children in the UK today are smaller than Haitian children, have greater obese levels than the French, and are less happy than the Turks, the figures show. Sakir told reporters that he was very concerned that the height of the children has fallen behind some other countries, adding, that is primarily down to malnutrition. That is something the government ought to be ashamed of. Yes, the government have not done enough yet to make sure that children are getting the meals everywhere. The Labour leader added, frankly, if this was a parent who had treated children this badly as the UK government, they would probably be charged with neglect. Paul Whiteman, General Secretary of School Leaders Union NAHT, said they were relieved that supervising toothbrushing won't be a part of the school day, but added, we remain somewhat sceptical about how this will work in practice. Daniel Kibbe, General Secretary of the National Education Union, said free breakfast club provision was a positive development for many schools. Yes, but he added, what is essential to the effective rollout of breakfast club and toothbrushing supervision, however, is sufficient funding and staffing levels. It is not all clear who will administer these new drives. Yeah, there's as well, as I said, yeah, there's going to be a cost to all this. How are we going to pay for these things as well? Other aspects of Labour's plans include introducing a 9 p.m. watershed for junk food ads, banning vape adverts aimed at children, better access to mental health support, cutting waiting times for hospital care for children, and ensuring more dental appointments. Again, like, we're all in favour of that, but how they're going to do it is the question. Sakir said the Child's Health Action Plan was fully costed and would be made definitively in the first term of Labour government. These are things that we would seek to do pretty much straight away. Excuse me. Andy Bell, Chief Executive of the Centre for Mental Health, welcomed Labour's proposals to improve support for children and young people's mental health. Dr. Lang Smith, President of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, says the number of children struggling with their mental health has increased significantly in recent years, and it's positive to see commitments being made by the Labour Party to tackle the issue and reduce NHS waiting list. Tory Public Health Minister Andrea Leadsom said Sakir should focus on fixing his own house before criticising others, adding that this is the same old Labour has been of more spending and more taxes. On a visit to Elder Hay Children Hospital in Liverpool this afternoon, the Shadow Health Secretary West Stream responded to the Conservatives' criticism of the policy. Blaming fixing their own house. They haven't been in the house for 14 years. Speaking to broadcasters, West Stream said, if the Conservatives want to throw around silly labels like nanny state, then they're going to throw much more mud than that in the run-up to the election. I don't think the public are going to buy that after 14 years of their failure. We're not going to sit idly by while tooth decay sees so many children admitted to hospital. Yeah, that, you know, I'm like I said, guys, I'm totally on board with this free breakfast club. I like, that they want to really prioritise the needs of children, and that's a great thing. But in terms of this tooth decay and that, like I said, I don't think it's something that teachers should be overlooking. I don't think it's something that schools should be overlooking. I think it should be something, if you can provide it, if they cannot afford basic essential needs, some lower incomes and poorest of families, basic toothbrush, basic toothpaste, provide it for them. So, and then it'll be down to the parents to make sure that they are doing that, so that they are looking after their teeth. I think that can be something that can be done. If you're going to ask me how do we fund it, I'm not sure quite how we fund that. It's easy for people to say, who are actually doing okay in life, to say, well, they can get a cheap one down at Savers for blah 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 blah. Well, obviously, if I'm pretty sure if parents could afford it, they would afford it. But obviously, there's some parents out there who can't. So maybe we need to look at why they can't and what we're going to do to deal with that. So there's that as well. I know. I just want kids to have the best opportunity in life possible, guys. That's generally how I feel. And feeding them is the number one priority. And then obviously there's, getting food in their belly, education and whatnot. But yeah, you guys know how I feel about this. Right, next, guys, we have one from Open Democracy here. This, I don't know too much about this one, so but let's read into it anyway. So the headline is, has been revealed that environment agencies have invested £15 million in forever chemical firms. Taxpayers' money pumped into companies that produce PFAS, despite health environmental warnings. Now, I'm not a chemist or have much knowledge about this, but I'm pretty sure that this is under the category of dark money investigations. So this sounds like we're potentially more taxpayer money going out the drain from the looks of this. So let's read into it to get a better heads around it. So the Environment Agency has invested nearly £50 million of taxpayer money into companies that produce cardiological forever chemicals, Open Democracy can reveal. The regulator is meant to create better places for people and wildlife and has issued stark warnings against the PFAS. That's per and perfluoroalkyl substances, a family of chemicals that can cause almost indefinite environmental contamination. But records show that the Environment Agency's pension fund has invested millions directly into chemical funds that produce the PFAS. Separately, the pension fund has also invested huge sums into the semiconductor companies, which are known to be some of the biggest users of the chemicals. Now, if this chemical does do indefinite environmental contamination, why are we investing in it? What's going on here? PFAS chemicals are widely used and can be found in everything from waterproof clothing to non-stick saucepans to firefighting equipment and electronics. But according to the Environment Agency, the EA, their extreme persistence could lead to long-term exposure of both people and wildlife, and some of the chemicals are also known to show harmful effects in humans. Studies have linked certain PFAS chemicals to cancer, thyroid diseases, and immune systems to fertility problems in humans, as well as developmental defects in unborn children. But they have become so persistent that there is not a single population or place on Earth untouched by the PFAS contamination. The latest findings comes after weeks of recent testings found that all but one water company in England has already had potentially toxic levels of PFAS in their water supply. Well, that's pretty scary. All but one water company in England. That makes me wonder what I'm drinking every day, because all I drink is water. Well, I do drink other drinks as well, but mainly water. Despite boasting in the past about the fund's green credentials and plans to go into net zero, Open Democracy found that money had been invested into 5 chemical companies that produce the PFAS. Merck, MEREC, £11.2 million, 3 million, 1.2 million. Honeywell, 3M, that is, I'm assuming that's a company name. Honeywell, £1.2 million, Bayer, £838,000, and Dongpont of $158,000. The American company that pioneered the use of PFAS in consumer goods. Saying this while I'm drinking water. I'm looking at my water now, guys. So my understanding is that this chemical is bad, but some of these companies have already agreed payouts over allegations that water systems have been contaminated by the PFAS. In one case, the residents of a town in West Virginia filed a cross-action lawsuit after thousands contracted serious conditions, including cancer following water contamination. The story was the subject of a Hollywood film called Dark Water in 2009, starring Mark Ruffalo. Oh, okay. Now I'm gonna worry a little bit. Last summer, the chemical giant 3M also agreed to pay up to $12.5 billion to settle a lawsuit over PFAS contamination, described as the largest drinking water settlement in American history. Jeez. As well as water contamination, close contact with certain PFAS has also been linked to disease in humans. In one case, firefighter Paul Cotton from Rochester, Massachusetts, had been celebrating his promotion to lieutenant when routinely blood tests found worrying levels of PSA, a cancer marker. He was eventually diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2014. His wife Diane told Open Democracy he ended up having to have his prostate removed by doctors to remove the cancer. My husband was such a healthy firefighter at 55 years old. He was challenging firefighters that were 25 years old, but he was left incoherent and he could no longer do the work of a firefighter after the cancer. She said, I called it a depression. When it came after the surgery, he just couldn't leave his chair for weeks. He was emotionally and physically just deteriorating. After seeing how many other firefighters have been diagnosed with cancer and discovering that firefighters' gear and foam in the US contained PFAS, Diane Cotter started to suspect a connection. The WHO recently even classified the career as one of the most serious Group 1 carcinogens. Eventually, in 2020, a scientific study that Cotter helped organize suggests that firefighters' gear was shedding toxic amounts of PFAS into firefighters' skin. Oh my god. Campaigners said that the company produced the PFAS had been aware of its potential toxic effects when used in fabric for decades. Speaking to Open Democracy, the Green Party peer Natalie Bengen says that the Environment Agency should urgently remove from its investment portfolio any associations with companies that are at the heart of this regulatory responsibility. She added, England is choked with plastics and chemical pollutants with serious ramifications to the public and environmental health. It needs a regulator to see that is seen to be independent and up to the job, and it does not have it now. The chair of EA's pension committee, Robert Gould, was the former Conservative leader of Dorset County Council in 2017. He has claimed that the pension fund approach is influenced by the desire to act in the wider public interest. As well as pumping money directly into firms that produce PFAS, the pension fund has also invested millions into at least 15 different firms that produce semiconductors. They include Applied Materials, Analog Devices, and Nvidia, with whom it invested £17 million, £13.6 million, and £9.6 million apiece, making them among the 30 biggest investments made by the regulator. What is this? Why are we giving them taxpayer money? What's this? How is this helping us? This is very scary. The semiconductor industry is one of the main users of PFAS, which are used for critical coating materials and chemical resistant parts in the chip supply chain. But most of these invested by the Environment Agency have refused to commit to phasing out the chemicals. The EU recently rolled back on proposals to ban all of the 10,000 PFAS chemicals, which would have come with a 13.5-year transition period for the chip industry. It follows the industry's €12 million, that's £10 million, splurge on lobbying EU institutions a year before. So they were trying to lobby the EU institutions and they basically said no. In the US, the chemical industry has likely spent over $110 million, that's £87 million, during the last two election cycles, deploying lobbyists to kill dozens of pieces of PFAS legislation and slow administration regulations around the forever chemicals. This sounds like something that's going to come back to bite us in the future. I'm just saying now. Meanwhile, the cost of dealing with the environment and health damage caused by the PFAS pollution in Europe could be as high as €2.4 trillion. That's £2.1 trillion a year, according to Chemsec, a non-profit that receives funding from the Swedish government. While some of the most hazardous PFAS chemicals, including PFOSs and PFOAs, are mostly banned, there are little to no limit to the rest of the thousands of other chemicals, PFAS chemicals, despite growing concerns about their health impact. In October, the Royal Society of Chemistry called for the UK to urgently take a new approach to PFAS, including much tougher regulation of the chemicals and increased monitoring of drinking water. Yes, this could potentially be lethal to people. It could eventually kill people if they're not careful. The spokesperson for the Environment Agency told Open Democracy its pension fund was legally separated from the operational and regulatory functions carried out by the Environment Agency and said that its third-party managers controls what makes up its portfolio. They added that the regulator was analysing our investment portfolio for its impact on nature in line with the current best practice, which will inform our future discussions with said managers. This is pretty frightening. I don't have much knowledge of this, but this the very fact that this PFAS is really, really concerning. But especially the story of the fireman. Just imagining that, I mean, it's incredibly worrying to say the least. Yeah, they really need to look into that as soon as possible. They really, really do, because that's incredibly worrying to say the least, guys. It's very concerning to say the least. I'll try and keep an eye out. I'm sure this will not be the last time we will hear of it either as well, that's for sure. Just before I go to the last article, guys, if you can also as by the usual plugs up there, guys. If you can financially support me, you can do so by joining the YouTube membership here for just 99p, which gives you access to a couple of special features. And also, if you want exclusive content, you can get that by joining my Patreon as well. If you want to try them as well. I also have my YouTube short videos that some of you guys may see also on TikTok, so you can also find them on TikTok as well as on Instagram. Links for them are in the description down below as well. Let's dive into the last story, guys. Long COVID. This is what this is about from Byline Times. We need to talk about long COVID, a sufferer on the silence around the public health crisis. Kat Fraser, who has lived with a chronic illness for years, said it's time to get long COVID on the agenda and give its many victims the support it needs. Long COVID is still happening. People are still suffering from it, and we don't talk about it because it's not in the news, guys. It's important to remember that there are people still to this day, 4 years on from the pandemic, who are still suffering as we speak, guys. And their lives turned upside down. Some of them may have lost many have lost their lives due to COVID, but there are people consistently suffering from COVID still to this day. During the first term of university, I had a severe case of glandular fever. 7 years later, I was 24 and I just moved in with my then boyfriend after I finished a secondment at one of the first global digital agencies in Paris. One day I started passing out in a quiet office by midday. It took me almost crushing my car 3 times in one day. I haven't driven since, and fall into what can only be described as a sleep coma at the weekends, which often drag on for days after. Before I was given the diagnosis of neurologic disease, that's I can't say that word, but ME basically. Unfortunately, it didn't mean much to me or anyone else, so I carried on as normal until my body finally forced me to stop for 2 years. I was lucky. I was able to ignore my graded exercise therapy that was prescribed to me. I could barely walk up the steps to my front door. The cohesive behavioural therapy was attempted and abandoned, as I barely had enough energy to talk to my partner at the end of his workday. I didn't see how either of these two things reflected my needs of extreme bed rest and a financial safety net for me to be able to do so. Thanks to my family assistance, I wasn't forced back into working in an office straight away. I did regain some strength and managed to rebuild a career, often home working, which enabled me to work on big brands and on short projects, followed by months of recovery. But it also meant I rarely had any energy left for anything else or anyone. My untreated chronic disease, the on-off disability, kept pushing me to the edge of my relationship, finance, work, tech, and society. And then in 2020, COVID hit me. As the world went back into learning to live out of lockdown, I found I wasn't recovering and began to analyse all my health interactions during 2020. I had spent £3,100 and on Bupa £2,500 trying to find help in a solicited health system that was never designed to treat any of my health problems. Last year, George Morgan warned that we are all playing COVID roulette, as 10 to 20% of infections can result in new health conditions and long-term disability. The public are still not being told that after the initial infections, the SARS-CoV-2 virus that caused COVID can confuse and disable our immune systems, makes us more susceptible to other viruses and diseases. This is long COVID, a multi-system, multi-organ complex chronic disease with no diagnostic, approved treatment or cure that can trigger widespread inflammation and microclots which can block capabilities, starving our cells, tissues and organs, including our brain, of oxygen. People with long COVID and other chronic conditions, including me, have a dizzying array of symptoms and a shopping list of complex biomedical problems that will not show up in a standard blood test. They may be symptoms or be followed by a cardiovascular and neurological disease. HR policies have been built around a healthcare system that didn't teach ME, a medical school, as a biological disease. These are known as gender gaps in critical illness that cover favourably men over women, who are more likely to suffer from the autoimmune disease. Since the start of the pandemic, there has been a rise in workplace sickness absence of 45%. According to one survey, while a 2023 CIPD and Simply Health report found that 1 in 5 employers are unable to say whether employees are still experiencing long COVID symptoms. Employees who are not recovering are falling out of the workplace, and even doctors with long COVID are losing their jobs and homes. By March 2023, reports suggest that 1.9 million people had self-reported long COVID in the UK, whilst 2.6 million are out of work due to the long-term sickness, and 3.7 million have a work limit condition. Long COVID is costing the UK an estimated 1.5 billion in lost earnings a month, while globally, the economic cost has already reached $3.7 trillion in 2022. But then across the world, governments, media, public health and business told everyone it was over, and that we have won the war against COVID with vaccines. The message in the UK was and is, now let us never talk about it again. The subsequent removal of data and monitoring is making it hard to see and count the true costs of long COVID to individuals, organisations and society. Before I go on, guys, my absolute heart goes out to her and everyone who has suffered from long COVID, but she had already gone through a lot of battles before COVID. COVID has exacerbated her conditions, and many people are still struggling, still suffering. And if they're not identified enough long COVID, what are we doing about it? I know we're about to read what we're doing about it, but it's quite infuriating that because the vast majority of the public are okay now, that all of a sudden we stop talking about COVID and we can move on. And it's like, well, what about those who aren't able to move on from it? What about those who aren't over the stuff? Why are we not? What are we doing about them? And the perception is like, well, who gives a damn? Like, we have an economy to run. We got people to get back into work and all this kind of thing. That's kind of the perception that painted to me by employers and government and whatnot, as opposed to what are we doing to make sure that those with long COVID are being looked after. During a raging pandemic that is still hurting us, social media became a digital home for myself and thousands of others, offering solidarity and validation. We learned from researchers, scientists and doctors with lived experiences how in a well-being economy we would choose prevention and including clean indoor air and rolling out HEPA filters at every school, hospital, office, shops, restaurants and homes to reduce COVID sickness by over 80%. We would not choose mass reinfection and forcing parents to send their sick children to schools who may still be infectious for 10 days, or who may be one of the estimated 62,000 children in the UK with long COVID. There could be 62,000 children with long COVID. We want employers to be conservative, accepting racial rest, pacing and making sure that we don't exercise our way back to health as this can be dangerous. We do not accept another carrot and stick return to work program. We want to build sustainability safety nets to those who can't work, such as safe sick pay, a universal basic income, and a redesign of work to support the mild energy impaired, back to flexibility work opportunities, such as a 2-day-a-week good jobs when they felt able. Above all, through our global corporation, we listen to those with lived experiences opposing the diversion of funding towards inappropriate psychiatric methods that have been shown to harm patients and can create gaps in the medical system that can kill. Instead, we're being investing in solving the root causes with a focus in biomedical treatments and the objective of curing all infections associated chronic diseases. Last year, the global community that I'm a part of started mobilizing from their homes and beds to create this function for themselves and others. It saw the launch of the Unhappy Holidays campaign to Long COVID Moonshot, the launch of the new platform dedicated solely to the sick times, and the Long COVID advocacy educating the creativity and humour on our culture, war and politics. Through Berlin Buyers Club International Long COVID Awareness and Not Recovered, we've collaborated on a Long COVID billboard campaign across the US and Europe, whilst Long COVID groups have united efforts for the UK COVID inquiry along a campaign to remind everyone it could happen to you. And drawing on HIV and AIDS impact work, Long COVID Justice and Millions Missing Action are expanding their protests, toolkits, outreach and support for those with long COVID in trans, black and other minority communities. In 2024, it's time that we admit that we all need to work together to choose our health. Our communities can help with that. We are still in the pandemic. It never went away. This was written by Kat Fraser. Kat Fraser is a health campaigner and writer. She is building a platform to connect hard to reach people with policymakers. She also coordinates with a business group at the World Health Network, a science-based task force, guys. And like I said, all the links will be in the description, guys. So if you want to try and get in contact with her and the organisations for them, just click the link. There'll be links within the article itself, guys. So definitely, if you definitely want to. I thought that was a very nice argument piece there by Kat Fraser. There are people still suffering out there, and it's glad that people are still shouting about it, and rightly so. There was a report that I saw today, actually, before I wrap things up, just to say to you guys as well. There was a report from that there were about 10,000 deaths from COVID-19 last year in 2023. That's in the world, globally, guys. Now you might think 10,000 across the globe suffering from COVID doesn't sound too bad. That's the ones that's been confirmed. We don't know how many are not as well. So that's still someone's mum, someone's father, someone's brother, someone's sister, someone's uncle. That's still 10,000 lives lost. And it's important we remember what the damage that COVID has done, but it's also remember to make sure that we are doing everything we can to prevent COVID from ever sprouting up again. Yes, society has moved on from it, but society should not forget about it either. We should make sure that we always try to protect ourselves the best way possible. I'm not saying we should put masks back on. I'm not going that far at all, guys. But we should take seriously that people out there are still suffering from COVID. As well as COVID is still around, is still out there, and we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves in the best way possible. And to do that is by reaching out to these organisations and continuing to put pressure on governments wherever we are across the globe. And on that, guys, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's watched Regan's Newsround episode 20, guys. Let me know what you guys honestly think about some of the stories that we covered in today. What did you think of some of them? Fascinating, interesting, informative, educational. I hope all these terms that I've used did help you guys. Before you go, just before you click off the video, guys, can you, before you do that for me, hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media so other people are aware of some of these stories. And subscribe to the channel because it really does help us a lot as well. And if you hit the bell notification icon, you'll be notified when I upload another video. And guys, if you want to go one step further and support what I do here on this channel, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. Yes, just 99p, guys, goes a long way to supporting me financially and the work that I'm doing here on this channel, because I really want to get as much information as I possibly can out there to you guys. But also in other ways, if you want to help and support me, you can also do so by joining me on Patreon as well for exclusive content there as well. All the links for all my social medias are in the descriptions if you want to have a look for yourselves, guys. So thank you so much for watching. If you've watched this far, take care whoever you are, whatever you're doing, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.